Well, for the Houston Texans, the majority of the questions at the Combine probably going to be on a guy who will never play for them again, most likely, in Deshaun Watson. But how much could they get for him on the trade market? Is there a trade market for him? New head coach Lovie Smith, who was the defensive coordinator last season, and their general manager Nick Caserio, entering his second season at the helm, wants to think about things other than football to start things off.
So welcome, good afternoon. I know this is kind of funny, but it's actually my first time behind the podium after being in the league 20 some odd years, so I know Phil Perry's smiling over there. Before we kind of get started on football, I just want to kind of take it away from football for a minute and just have some reflection and just perspective about some of the things that are going on in the world, some of the things that are happening in Eastern Europe. I think it kind of puts in perspective kind of what we're doing here. Like, this is important, but it's really not important. So I think thoughts and prayers to the people of Ukraine and some of the things that they're dealing with. I think we kind of lose sight of kind of what goes on in the real world when we're worried about football and testing and combine and people running. So I just think it's appropriate to kind of take a few minutes and just reflect on that and just realize that our thoughts and prayers are with the folks there. I think there's been, 500,000 people that have left Ukraine, the refugees. So, again, like what we're doing, like, it matters, but it really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. So, we're excited to be here. Good opportunity for, I'd say, our team organization to kind of start our planning process here a little bit for the offseason. It's been a couple weeks with the new coaching staff in place with Coach Smith, hired Lovie a couple weeks ago. I have some experience with him, obviously, being in the system and a program for a year. And then I would say this week it was really about information. It's trying to get organized. I think players, there are going to be some players that work out. There are going to be some players that do certain things. I think it's about what you take out of this week. You can get as much done as you need to, and not get caught up in the things that aren't happening and who's working out, who's not working out. So I think we're excited about the opportunity to continue to build a team. A lot of change has taken place, I'd say, organizationally over the last, call it 12 months. It's hard to believe it's been a year or so they've been on the job. We did some decent things as a team last year. Had a lot of new players. Have a number of players that will be free agents this year. So we'll be visiting the offseason here, kind of rebuilding the team. But looking forward to free agency and looking forward to some opportunities here in the draft, once we kind of get started. So appreciate everybody being here. Brooks, go ahead.
What do you think of the market right now for that pick and the situation of quarterback and other positions, and what things in this week that you look for that might dictate whether you move?
Sure. Yeah, it's pretty early in the process, I would say, more than anything. I mean, you kind of know who's picking where right now. Nothing changes. I think, speaking specifically to this week, I don't think there's anything that happens or takes place here relative to what players do on or off the field, or what happens in a 20-minute interview is going to change, what your philosophy on moving back or making trades or those types of things. So I think the most important thing for us is to kind of know as many players as possible. I'd say we're, relative to last season, we're in a little different position relative to, we kind of eliminated, call it 55, 60 players last year, right, that we knew we weren't going to have access to. So now I'd say the pool of players is a little bit wider. So just trying to get as much information. I'd say that the group that probably is most pressing are the underclassmen, because this is really the first opportunity to spend extensively with them kind of face-to-face. A lot of them weren't at an all-star game. So I would say you're kind of in the infantile stages. As far as when trades or movement, those types of things take place, those are things as you get a little bit closer to the draft. You having dialogue or discussions with other teams about that probably, doesn't make that much sense. But philosophically, in terms of team building, the people that have followed us, we're pretty open-minded. We're pretty flexible, whatever means necessary. So whether it's trade, whether it's move back in the draft, whether it's move up, whether it's trade with another team in the league, whether it's whatever it is, we're going to explore all avenues. Go ahead, Aaron. Yeah, I'd say generally speaking, we saw some progress from the rookies, not just Davis, but I'd say Nico, kind of as the year progressed. Garrett Wallow had an opportunity to play a little bit later in the year. The one guy that played the most snaps, or was the most consistent from beginning to end, was Roy Lopez, when he was picked in the 6th round or something like that, whatever it was. So I think the big thing, you're just looking for some level of improvement and progress from year 1 to year 2. We've had about, 25, 30 players that have been in NRG over the last, 2 to 3 weeks. So they're hungry, they're excited for the off season. So they're kind of starting their training regimen. So they're kind of turning the page to next season. So I think the biggest thing is kind of taking advantage of their opportunities between now and the start of OTAs. Our off-season program will start, I think it's going to start April 11th-ish, something like that. So we got a couple weeks early relative to maybe some of the other folks. So just try to be smart, and just hopefully those guys can see the gains that they made during the season and hopefully continue to build on the things that they did, last season. Go ahead, Vanessa. Yeah, great question. I'd say philosophically, in terms of players, like competitiveness, toughness, I would say consistency and grit, and a certain level of football aptitude or intelligence. So when you have a one-on-one conversation, those are some of the things you might be able to glean. The way we're set up is, we try to steer towards football as much as possible. So let them kind of teach us what they know, because everybody's baseline of understanding what they were asked to do is different. What one receiver is asked to do at one place is different than another receiver. And when you're just watching them play, you don't really have an understanding of what they're asked to do. So you just try to ascertain some of that information, try to get a baseline understanding. The reality is the baseline of where they're starting when they walk in our building is pretty low. So then it's going to be a matter of how quickly are they going to be able to make progress and learn. Everybody has different stages of learning that they're going to go through. So you really don't want to jump to judgment too quickly about, okay, a 20-minute conversation and say, you know what, we're going to eliminate and made a bad impression. Okay, let's do a deeper dive. Maybe there's something that we have to find out a little bit more as we go. But I'd say some of the intangible elements of what we look for in players, in terms of what we want in the building on a day-to-day basis, like those are the things that are going to be important to us.
Nick, how does a more normal? Do you expect next year for Rex Burkhead to be your lead guy for the rest of the roster? You might look to Royce Freeman, David Johnson. What's your outlook for morning guy?
Sure, number of players at that position that are going to be free agents, guys that made contributions for us last year. We were able to re-sign Rex at the end of the year, kind of extend him into this season. I'd say Rex's role grew as the year progressed, probably more out of need more than anything else. But that's probably a position that, we'll evaluate as we go. We only have 3 players under contract currently. Rex is one, Scotty Phillips, and then Darius Anderson, who kind of signed, as a reserve future player there after the season. So that's probably a position that we'll kind of evaluate here, during the off season, how we build it out. I mean, I think it's, yet to be determined.
Nick, how does
Go ahead, Aaron.
a more normal college football season in 2021 affect how you approach the later rounds of the draft or the undrafted pool of guys? Obviously, last year you traded up out of the 6th and 7th.
Sure. We had ended up with 5 draft picks and then 6 or 7 undrafted players that we signed after the draft. So as you look at where we are roster-wise currently, I think we have 47, 48 players that are on the roster. So to go from 50 to 90, we're probably not going to do it all in free agency. And then we have, call it 9 draft picks right now, and then there's probably more of an opportunity for some of the undrafted players after the draft. But I would say we probably spend as much time on that group of players. We have a grade that's commensurate with that round or being post-draft. You really have an opportunity to really identify some of the players that maybe you want in your program that maybe aren't going to get drafted. And there's different ways to get players on your team. And I would say spending as much time on that group of players, knowing that group, is just as important as knowing the top 50 players in the draft. So, again, it really speaks to more of a comprehensive deep dive of knowing the overall board. Like, there's however many players get drafted, 200, almost 300. And then there's going to be another large group of players that are signed after the draft. So you don't want to kind of cast that group aside. But, we were fortunate going back to our time in New England and even going back to Roy last year. Those players are going to be an important part of your team because there's a certain cost associated with that. So you have to be able to build kind of your team out. You can't pay every player X number of dollars, so you kind of have to spread the cost out and asset allocation, as best as possible. Go ahead, Aaron.
That was Nick Caserio, general manager of the Houston Texans, and Ryan Wilson has the Texans going with safety Kyle Hamilton with their number 1 pick, the 3rd overall pick. If that is the case and Hamilton goes that high, it would be the highest a safety has gone in over 30 years.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.